So you hate the elites, do you? Well, why don't you quit acting like one? Oh, you don't think that applies to you? So, I guess you've never said anything like,
Everyone is so stupid. People just don't have common sense anymore. Look at all these NPCs.
yeah, if equity is the aim for a better tomorrow, then we need to stop saying stuff like that. We need to have more faith in each other. We need to stop positioning ourselves as some false buffer between the people who are eating our lunch and the rest of society at large. If you consider yourself to be above it all, then you yourself are categorically elite in your own head alone. Not elite in your wallet, not elite in leadership or even taste. Those things can be tested, essentially. If you're just elite in your own head, then how do you know you're not succumbing to illusion or delusion? Maybe you're the one that's stupid. Maybe you don't have common sense. Maybe you are the NPC, self-contained in your own programming. If you want to beat the elites, you can't aspire to their mindsets. Let's talk about it. So a funny thing happened this year. It might be a little too premature to outright call it class consciousness, but doesn't it seem like we're on the way, at least, getting a little closer? And at the very, very least, can we not say there's a depravity of the system that we are all witnessing together? Or at least, we think we're witnessing because unfortunately, unreality seems to be one of the intentions of whatever these dark arts really are. A lot of potential projections on the cave wall right now. Reality show USA right there with the business host guy in his final season. I hope. Give the people what they want. The Epstein Files, courtesy of the Epstein estate, by way of the U.S. Department of Justice. Okay. So now we're all in a haunted house together. It's scary, I guess, but there are also these assholes running the fog machines, pushing buttons on the animatronic spiders that drop down from the ceiling. They're hiding behind the scenes and projecting ghosts on the wall. But here's the thing. If we're all in that house together, then we outnumber the staff. So the question we're all trying to figure out is, how do we breach the employees only area? Know what I'm saying? How do we unveil the Wizard of Oz in the little box turning all the cranks? Or have we done that? Are we continuing to do that? Or are they just turning more and more cranks no matter what? Is there a wizard behind the wizard? Because Epstein ain't the only guy. Not the only wizard. And not the only guy who pretend-decided. I'm looking at you, Jean-Luc Brunel, Thomas Bowers, Mark Middleton, and Steve Bing. And all of this drama could very well just be part of the show, manufactured for the show to keep their influence over us growing. But again, there are more people watching the show than working the show. Of course, there are useful idiots among us, adding to the cruelty, assisting in the deception, but they're also just a minority of the majority. Because again, the majority is the 99%, not the 1%. If you work for ICE, you're with the 99%. You're right there with everyone else who's going to get shut out of the bunkers while they scald the rest of us with climate disaster. But you just got to taste the boot just to see, right? So, if we don't know what's real in the haunted house that we're all in, but we know enough to know we're surrounded by people in costumes and strobe lights, then what does that look like for the collective? It can be hard to see in the dark. It can be hard to consider the path among toothless chainsaws grinding in the distance. But we can recognize that it's a show, and we can disrupt it together. We can stand up in our seats, and at the very least, we can look away from the stage and have our own conversations that rudely interrupt the performance that way. And security may ask you to leave, but would they ask everyone to leave? Doesn't that just end the show? Does Shiva's dream end when the audience exits? Do the actors and crew then rot away in their bunker-based purgatory while the majesty of death that they avoided then evolves the rest of our species into super beings? Maybe even super beings who get enough of a clue to seal the bunkers of their ancestors forever, leaving behind the old ways, dead or alive, to their final resting spots in such well-equipped and ready-made gray tombs. Everything they need for the afterlife. We can do this if we're all on the same page. And the good news is we are all reading the same book. Our interpretations differ. And none of us are really sure if it's fact or fiction sometimes, but does that matter when the masks are off? Even if the story is a manufactured psyop born of Epstein's connections with 4chan, or Maxwell's connections with Reddit, or her dad's connection with fucking Houghton Mifflin, for that matter, it has no real power if we know it's a psyop. Remember when conspiracy theories were more of a bipartisan type of deal? Alex Jones was in Waking Life. Remember Zeitgeist, the movie, or that 9/11 documentary, Loose Change? Whether you think those movies make a good case or not, was there anyone who was alive for 9/11 that didn't watch those? So, like, what happened? I think Jean Baudrillard's idea that new simulations replace old systems by neutralizing our perceptions of passive versus active is at play here. This seems to have been achieved with an ideological pole flip that was accelerated through our televisions, then social media, and the puppeteers of information. This was achieved by two actions. It introduced conspiracy theory to the Christian fundamentalist movement, and it positioned conspiracy theory as a right-wing attribute while insisting that the conspiracies themselves were exclusively served by left-wing Hollywood hedonists. The elite! The framing they created by doing this is that permissiveness is godlessness, the left is permissive, ergo the left is godless. Then they spent decades dumping every queer, dark, progressive, or secularist person, even just non-Christian person, into that godless container of the other. But they told you they were the true elites: scientists, abortion doctors, drag queens, all working against nature, insisting they exist, insisting they carry on with their personal interest. How dare them? And then comedians started reveling in their own ignorance, judging things on how they feel from afar, punching down on the weirdos and sucking up to the money, claiming independent thought, preaching libertarian demands, but drawing the line at any opinion that pushes back on their own.
Wouldn't want to get canceled.
Meanwhile, the true sinners, those who exploit others and demand cruelty, are lifted up and revered as heroes, fighting what they trained others to consider evil or weird. Because what's the difference, since the acceptance of that which is weird is inherently permissive? Be who you want to be, so they say, but then who will save you from the femboys who are just 2 steps away from terrorism anytime they wear cat ears? Who will save you? Donald Trump? The rapist? Donald Trump, the antichrist? And that was the switch. A new left versus right dynamic was created, and the Overton window severely shifted. Where the left used to be progressive and moving forward in action, while the right was conservative and moved to limit action, it was now the right who was pushing for radical, forceful change, while the left could do little more than play defense. All those bills about who should use what bathroom are always proposed by the right, or in maybe one or two cases drawn up in response to one from the right. They actively created an enemy and then rallied around it. And when the enemy is permissiveness itself, then we're working with very unclear boundaries. Who is ICE out there arresting again? Palantir wants my retinal scan for what now? This is why assault goes excused as boys will be boys by anyone who wasn't there to see it in person, but a guy wearing a dress to the grocery store becomes an enemy of the state. If you lead a moral crusade against that guy and his personal preference, then no one will ever stop to think about your own more private personal preferences. John Wayne Gacy was a clown. Dennis Hastert was the Speaker of the House. Without meaningful action, the left is toothless. With radical enforcement, the right is abusive. And so it goes that the hubris of the left empowers the narcissism of the right. I'm going to say it again. The hubris of the left empowers the narcissism of the right. And if you want proof, look no further than this moment. Bernie and the bird.
Now you see, this little bird doesn't know it. Oh, I think there may be some symbolism here.
This was a sign from God, y'all. Bernie could have done us right. He was the anti-Trump, but who actually blew it? Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Hillary Clinton, and the Democratic Party. And while this was the clearest rejection of the path of righteousness I have ever seen, perhaps, let's remember that they went on to fuck with us in at least 2 more elections after that. Okay, I'm going to chill out for a minute. A little side note here, a little calm, pleasant side note. I don't think Biden should have run a second time, and that was definitely his hubris on display, or that of his handlers. But I must say that he is one of the rare good guys. The infrastructure bill was a little too late, but it was something. Beyond that, one thing I took from this book, Dark Victory, Ronald Reagan, MCA, and the Mob by Dan Moldea, is that back in the 70s and 80s, when organized crime was puppeteering Reagan, Biden was one of the only people that called it out. And he called it out with no fear. And that was not a popular fight back then. So give the guy a smidgen of credit. He's probably going to be dead soon. So, okay, ignore the chainsaws now, and let's look at the path. The American public was harshly polarized for the past decade, but now we have the gift of hindsight. The Democrats made the critical error of cheating Bernie. That was the original sin as far as I'm concerned. So, shame point to the Democrats for that. But then the right ran Donald Trump on a platform of identity politics, which got them their guy, but also really soured the process. Plus, he was not a good guy in 2016 either. Some of you haven't watched ESPN's 30 for 30 episode Small Potatoes, Who Killed the USFL? And it shows. So, shame point to the Republicans on that one. And then what happened when the right started getting into all the conspiracies? Well, they made them fall out of fashion with the left. So if QAnon says that celebrities eat babies and presents Donald Trump as the solution to their decadence, then what is anyone left of Donald Trump going to say then, well, maybe jet fuel can melt steel beams? And just like that, the larger truth of cannibal elites was made fringe in the light of absurd expectations. Shame point to the left for minimizing the whole truth on account of a single contaminant. But then also, shame point to the right for leaving the contaminant in the truth. And not only that, but for trying to silence people who were warning others of that contaminant. Trump derangement syndrome, anyone? Now, that seems to be a four-cornered foundation of this mess right there. 2 points to the left, 2 points to the right, 2 points to the hubris, 2 points to the narcissism. How about a point for hubris when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died instead of retiring? A point for narcissism when Merrick Garland was denied a Supreme Court hearing. A point for hubris, again, when Biden ran for a second term, and a point for narcissism when Trump denied the election results of the first term. And yet, I don't recall having a say in any of that. Did you? So who is the elite here? Who, at this point, is too good for the conspiracy theories, and who, at this point, is still simping for Trump as a savior? Only the fringe of the fringe, and those who are paid to have particular opinions. Could the eyes of your brothers and sisters not be as open as your own? And once again, who are you to say? What kind of elitist would you be to assume? Consider Judas's betrayal of Jesus Christ. That's basically a yin in the yang of Christ's disciples, right? But that doesn't make Judas any less of a disciple or any more of a Roman. So the disagreeable thing had to be done for the story to conclude, right? So what is the path forward? Well, it should be obvious by now that teamwork does make the dream work. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that you should go along to get along. Truth is the imperative, even if the truth is just a cloud of unknowing. Discourse is good because trial and error is the only way through. No one hears an unspoken truth, and therefore an unspoken truth is of no benefit. The worst and best that any truth can do is change a mind. Taking in new information and corroborating it with what we already know is how we sync up within the collective dream. Openness, mutual respect, and observational truth can bind a people and give them power. One-on-one, I think this is a bit more natural for people. To borrow Jon Stewart's analogy from the 2010 Rally to Restore Sanity and or Fear, all the people separated in their cars still work together to keep the traffic moving. And while there may be politically charged events that reflect clear derision, everybody's pretty polite in the grocery store. Online, it's a little different. There, your thoughts are disembodied. More precision is necessary since the thoughts are on display, but obviously precision is not always so commonplace. And on social media, effectiveness is generally more limited as well. It's right in line again with Baudrillard's notion that freer communication leads to less meaning. In other words, social media is plagued by too many cooks in the kitchen. Everyone has an opinion, all of them suck. But therein lies the trick. Lose your opinions when you're speaking to other people. Don't claim yours and don't acknowledge theirs. Say what is true or how it appears to be true to you, but make no inherent judgment. Allow the situation, whatever it is, to speak for itself. That means no good and evil, no right and wrong, just events, and how anyone feels about those events is theirs to work through. Now, I'm not saying you should completely withhold either. We need all extremes for sorting. On your own social media accounts, say whatever you want to say, have all the opinions you please. That's actually a really good way to see who can look beyond the differences. It's the people who respect you enough to leave you to it in your own space. For example, I've got friends on Facebook who I've seen spouting things I fundamentally disagree with, from COVID to Charlie Kirk to just owning the libs. And since I use Facebook basically as a dumping ground for shit talk, no doubt they have seen plenty of harsh or harsh-ish words in the opposite direction from me. But God love those of them who stay out of my comments if they have nothing more to add than another opinion. And God love those of them who still wish me a happy birthday. And God love the time when we all come back around to common ground. Common ground that would not be found had we zigzagged away or wrote each other off as the other. Consider this. On September 9th, 2025, I would have called Charlie Kirk a stooge, while my friends on the right called him a great thinker. By September 12th, we found ourselves in alignment about that which we did not know. We found ourselves in alignment that the narrative we were given about Charlie Kirk didn't add up, no matter what you thought of the guy. And that alignment could not have come to fruition had we been such elitists as to write each other off for the times we did not align. And time indeed is all that it took. Time and the unity of unknowing something. The unity of unknowing. I compare that to the friends who couldn't go a step beyond with me. There were really only two who I had considered close at any point, both little guys. One who took to sending me private messages in celebration that his side won and the days of LGBTQ stuff was over. Elitist as fuck, by the way. And another one who kept coming up in my comments regularly to tell me to shut up on my own Facebook page. Also elitist as fuck. Both of them went on blocking tirades from the slightest pushback. I found this particularly strange with the second person, who was someone I had known for about 25 years and collaborated with extensively. After my billionth online scolding from the guy who constantly repeated that social media isn't real while paying for a blue check on Twitter, I messaged him and offered to restrict what he can see on my Facebook page since he couldn't mute me himself. And I guess this rattled him because he immediately blocked me on every social media account before lecturing me on how unhealthy it was for me to speak of things I dislike. Elitist as fuck. Also a YP, not an MP. He also made a cope video on YouTube about how terrible discourse is, which is fucking absurd. And fucking elitist. Perhaps, had he actually tried to talk out whatever got his goat, it would not have come to such an eye roll of an end. But when you're constantly telling people to shut up, only to then also prohibit discourse, generally, doesn't that make you like a hypocrite? And of course, that came in the wake of Charlie Kirk as a response to my posting a collage of pundits and politicians immediately blaming the left for Kirk's assassination. It was a collage of actual statements, by the way, and my point being that it was far too soon for such assumption. And so much has happened since then, it makes me wonder where I might head otherwise or could otherwise be with my old friend today. I check his Twitter sometimes since you can't really block people there. I saw him arguing with people, engaging in the discourse he held against me in my own space. Arguments I don't even disagree with, though he deleted them all since I tagged him for a call-out. Discourse for thee, but not for me, sir. I noticed, though, he also stopped following Nick Fuentes and other hard ideologue accounts So, he let go of his blue check too. So, in my heart, I hope my old friend feels regret for extinguishing the possibilities of the future in favor of the anxieties of the present. Then again, this is the guy who made a whole fucking video lecturing Aquarius people for being future-minded.
Oh, brother.
But I never held that against him. After all, only an Aquarius could understand, try as he might, as a Taurus. But I wonder where he is now on these things. Did the killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy change his mind in any way? Is that why he scraped his Twitter? Are the Epstein Files bringing him to the same center that so many of us are now unable to ignore? The center where the worst conspiracies actually are real, the government really can't be trusted, and the only fight that remains is not left or right, but up and down. Might things be different now? Had just a little more time passed and a few more things been revealed? I guess there's no way to really know, but as America's crisis of character continues to unfold, I'm pretty sure it's better to have more social capital and not less. Silencing others and a throwing of hands are not a means of earning social capital. They are, in fact, the very actions that the true elites depend on to keep the systematic stress horizontal instead of vertical, at the throats of one another instead of their own throats. And if we can't move beyond that, then we will never be free souls again. So recognize that you are not elite, and to claim elitism or behave as an elitist in a field of opinions is purely poison. You can sprinkle every comment section with truth, and you can passionately argue on the internet until you're blue in the face. Maybe the right words will find the right eyes. But at the end of the day, at the end of the era, class consciousness is essential focus and the only thing that has any possibility of saving the working classes. And we can't achieve class consciousness without a willingness to engage and be engaged. We can't achieve class consciousness without patience for our friends who are still learning how to get there. We can't achieve class consciousness without understanding that we are united by our mutual quality of not being elite. We are united by our mutual quality of being kept in the dark by the elite. As Isaac Brock said in Blame It on the Tetons, a song ripped very directly from Harry Nilsson's Lottery song, by the way, the lyric is, "Language is the liquid that we're all dissolved in, great for solving problems after it creates a problem." So next time you encounter someone with a heavy opinion on left versus right, conservative versus liberal, Republican versus Democrat, whatever, just stop them with a smile and remind them it's not the battle anymore. It's the money changers versus everyone else now. Notice how quickly you fall into alignment 9 times out of 10. Maybe you'll make a new friend in the end. Someone who can be there to help seal the elites in their bunkers forever. You know it's going to come down to that, right? Like and subscribe.